Tonight, I will ask you one question. And you must be willing to answer it honestly. You believe you already know what you want, but that belief is the very thing that has kept it from you. For it is not your effort that has failed, not your method, not your persistence, not how long you have tried. It is something far simpler and far more difficult to face. You have been reaching for something without ever asking if it is truly what you want. I have stood in front of hundreds of people in this city, people who had read the books, followed the instructions, practiced the methods, and before I said another word, I would ask one question, a single question, not difficult to hear, but almost impossible to answer honestly. What do you want? Not what sounds reasonable, not what you think you can get, not what will not embarrass you if you fail. What do you want? And the room would go quiet, because most people, when they remain with that question long enough, discover they have never truly answered it. They have answered something made smaller, something made safer before it was ever spoken. And that is exactly what they have been reaching toward. Everywhere I spoke, I saw the same thing. People would come to me with their desires. They wanted more money, a better life, a way out of the condition they were in. And I would listen. But when I asked them to tell me plainly what it was they wanted, something would happen. They would draw back from it, even as they spoke it. They would not answer with what they wanted. They would answer with what they believed they could have, with what sounded reasonable, with what would not ask too much of them to believe, with what would not expose them to disappointment if it did not come. One man told me he wanted financial freedom. I asked him what that meant. He said, enough to meet my obligations without anxiety. I asked him, is that what you want? Or is that what you have accepted as enough? He could not answer. And in that moment, something is revealed. Because until a man can answer that question honestly, no method will take him where he longs to be. The law returns exactly what you are. And he had accepted something less. There is the desire you feel. This is the real thing. The condition you would be if you did not question it. The life that comes to you in quiet moments, before you begin to measure it, before you begin to consider whether it is possible. It is not something you construct. It appears. And in its first appearance, it is whole. And then there is what you do to it. You begin to look at it, to weigh it, to ask yourself whether such a thing could be. You begin to wonder how it will come, through which door it will arrive, what must be done for it to be yours. And as you do this, you move away from it. You are no longer within the desire. You are standing outside of it, examining it. God, as I use the word, speaks to you through that first desire. It is not too much. It is not accidental. It is not something you must earn. It is the thing you are called to be. But the moment you begin to qualify it, the moment you say perhaps something less would be enough, you have already turned away from it. You have left the being of it and entered into the thinking about it. You no longer remain faithful to what was first given to you. You make it smaller. You soften it. You reduce it until it feels safe enough to accept. And then you call that your desire. But it is not the same. It is something you have shaped after you stepped away from what was first shown to you. You did not fail because you could not manifest. You failed because you would not remain with it. You would not stay in the feeling of it as it first came to you. You turned from it before you ever lived from it. And so the law, which does not question you, which does not judge you, simply returns what you have accepted as true, not what you once desired, but what you settled into being. This is not greed. It is honesty. If you make the desire smaller, you will receive something smaller. Not failure, but something that does not fully satisfy. Something that seems right on the surface, yet leaves something within you untouched. This is why a man may receive what he asked for and still feel no relief. For what has come is not the thing itself, but what he allowed himself to accept. If the desire is reduced, what comes will feel incomplete. And you will wonder why. You will return to your efforts. You will attempt to believe more, to do more, to persist longer. And yet nothing changes in the way that matters, because the question was never answered. Ask no permission. You need no permission. It need not be reasonable. It need not be explained. There is only one thing required, that you answer honestly what you want. Before we go into the silence, I ask only one thing of you. Not quickly, not with the first answer that seems acceptable, but honestly, there is one question, and you must be willing to face it without turning away. What do you want? Not what sounds reasonable, not what you believe you can attain, not what will protect you from disappointment if it did not come. What do you want? Now see what happens when you ask it. The answer will come, and then almost at once you will begin to move away from it. You will say, it is too much. It is not possible. I do not see how such a thing could be. And in that moment, you have left it. That movement, that turning away, is the very place where your desire is hidden, not in what you finally say, but in what you refuse to remain with. It stands just beyond the point where you draw back from it. Do not force yourself beyond that point tonight. Do not struggle with it. Simply see it. Acknowledge that it is there and that you have turned from it. For the law does not ask you how it will be done. It does not require you to explain it or to make it reasonable. It asks only that you be it, and you cannot be what you have never dared to name. So now, not as a method, not as something you must practice, but quietly, remain with that first desire. The one that came before you began to reason against it. The one that asked nothing of you except that you be it. Feel what it would be like if it were already so. Not the lesser thing, not the one you have made acceptable, but the original. And ask yourself, have I ever lived from this? Or have I only stood outside of it, trying to reach it? That question alone will show you everything. Why things have been as they have been, and what must change, not in the outer world, but in the honesty with which you answer the only question that has ever mattered. What do you want? Now, let us go into the silence.